The Three Little Men in the Wood. Once there was a man whose wife sadly died, and a woman whose husband died as well. They each had a daughter. The woman said to the man's daughter, "Tell your father that I would like to marry him. If he and I marry, you will have milk every morning to wash in, and you will drink wine, while my own daughter will wash herself in water and drink water." The girl went home and told her father what the woman had said. The man said, "I don't know what to do. Marriage is a joy and also a pain." He could not decide, so at length he pulled off his boot and said, "Take this boot with the hole in it. Hang it on a big nail and pour water into it. If it holds the water, then I will marry the woman. But if the water runs through, I won't." The girl did this, and the hole in the boot blocked up, and the boot filled. The girl told her father, who went to the woman and married her. The morning after the marriage, when the two girls got up, there in front of the man's daughter was milk for her to wash in and wine for her to drink, as the woman had promised her. In front of the woman's daughter was water to wash in and water for drinking. But on the second morning, both daughters had only water. And on the third morning, the woman's daughter had milk and wine, but the man's daughter had only water. The woman became bitterly unkind to her stepdaughter. She was envious because her stepdaughter was beautiful and lovable, and her own daughter was repulsive and ugly. In winter, when everything was frozen as hard as stone and covered with snow, the woman made a dress out of paper. She called her stepdaughter and said, "Here, put on this dress, go out into the wood and fetch me a little basket full of strawberries." "Good heavens," said the girl, "strawberries don't grow in winter. The ground is frozen and snow has covered everything. And why am I to go in this paper dress? It is so cold outside that breath freezes. The wind will blow right through the paper." "Are you daring to contradict me?" asked the stepmother. "Do not show your face again until you have a basket full of strawberries." Then she gave the man's daughter a little piece of hard bread and said, "This will last you for the day." What she thought inside was, "You will die of cold and hunger, and I will never see you again." The man's daughter was obedient. She put on the paper dress and went out with the basket. Far and wide there was nothing but snow. When she got into the wood, she saw a small house with 3 little dwarves peeping out the windows. She knocked modestly at the door and wished them good day. They cried, "Come in." She entered the room and seated herself on a bench by the stove, where she began to warm herself and eat her piece of hard bread. The dwarf said, "Can we have some too?" "Of course," she said, and gave them half. They asked, "What are you doing here in the winter forest in such a thin dress?" "Ah," she answered, "I am looking for a basket of strawberries and cannot go home until I have found them." When she had eaten her bread, the dwarfs gave her a broom and said, "Sweep away the snow at the back door for us." Once she'd gone outside, they said to each other, "What shall we give her? She's so good and has shared her bread with us." The first said, "My gift is that she shall grow more beautiful every day." The second one said, "My gift is that every time she speaks, a gold pieces will fall out of her mouth." The third said, My gift is a king who will love and marry her." The girl swept away the snow behind the little house, and what did she find but ripe strawberries, dark red in the white world? Joyful, she gathered her basket full, thanked the little man, and ran home to deliver the berries to her stepmother. When she went in and said hello, a piece of gold fell out of her mouth. She told what had happened to her in the wood, and with every word she spoke, gold pieces fell from her mouth, until very soon the whole room was covered with them. "Now look at her arrogance," cried the stepsister, "throwing gold around." But really she was envious and wanted to seek strawberries in the forest also. Her mother said, "No, my dear daughter, you might die of cold." But her daughter still wanted to go, and at last the mother gave in. She made her own daughter a magnificent dress of fur, and gave her bread and butter and cake to take. The girl went straight to the little house in the forest. The 3 dwarves peeped out, but she did not greet them. Without speaking to them, she barged into their room, seated herself by the stove, and began to eat her bread and butter and cake. "Give us some bread and cake," cried the little man, but the woman's daughter replied, "There is not enough for me, so I cannot give any away." When she had finished eating, the dwarf said, "Here is a broom. Please sweep the snow away from the back door for us." "Sweep for yourselves," she answered. "I am not your servant." When she saw that they were not going to make gold fall from her mouth, she left. The little men said to each other, "What shall we give her? She is so rude and has a wicked, envious heart, and won't do a good turn for anyone else." The first said, "My gift is that she will grow uglier every day." The second said, "My gift is that every time she speaks, a toad will spring out of her mouth." The third said, "My gift is that she will die a miserable death." The mother's daughter looked for strawberries in the forest, but didn't find any. She went angrily home. She began to tell her mother what had happened, but whenever she spoke, a toad sprang out of her mouth, to everyone's horror. Her mother became still more enraged. She thought only of how to harm her husband's daughter, whose beauty grew more remarkable every day. One day the woman told her stepdaughter to rinse yarn by chopping a hole in the ice of the frozen river. The girl went out and cut the hole, but then a splendid carriage drove up. It belonged to the king. The carriage stopped, and the king asked, "Beautiful one, who are you, and what are you doing?" "I am a poor girl, and I am rinsing yarn." The king felt compassion for the girl, and he fell in love with her face. He said to her, "Would you come away and marry me?" "Yes, with all my heart," she answered, for she was glad to get away from her stepmother and stepsister. She travelled with the king to his palace, where they had a magnificent wedding. A year later, the young queen had a son. Her stepmother had heard of her good fortune. She came with her daughter to the palace and pretended that she wanted to pay the young queen a visit. But when the king had gone out and there was no one else around, the wicked woman seized the queen's head, and her daughter seized the queen's feet. They lifted her out of bed and threw her out of the window into a stream below. Then the ugly daughter lay in her bed, and the woman covered her up right over her head. When the king returned home, the woman told him his queen was unwell and that he must let her rest. The king suspected no evil and did not come back till next morning. Then he talked with his wife But when she answered him, toads leaped from the bed instead of gold pieces. He asked what this could mean, but the woman said it was just the illness and it would soon stop. During the night, the palace kitchen boy saw a duck come swimming up the stream. It came in and asked, "Where is my baby?" He answered, "The baby is sleeping in his cradle." Then the duck took the form of the queen and went upstairs to nurse the baby. Once she'd tucked the baby back into bed, she swam away again in the shape of a duck. She came again the next night. Then on the third night she said to the kitchen boy, "Go, tell the king to swing his sword 3 times above me." The kitchen boy ran and got the king, who came with his sword and did as the duck had asked. At the third swing, the wife stood before him, strong and healthy as she had been before. The king was amazed and joyful. The next day he called the queen's stepmother before him and asked her, "What does a person deserve who drags someone out of bed and throws them in the water?" "A wretch like that would deserve nothing better," answered the woman, "than to be put in a barrel stuck full of nails and rolled downhill into the river." The king said, "You have pronounced your own sentence." He ordered such a barrel to be brought, and the woman to be put into it with her daughter. Then the top was hammered on, and the barrel rolled downhill to the river.